Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's event. We are live on Facebook and we have our attendees here on Zoom just joining from the waiting room. So we're going to just give everybody a couple seconds to join. We're really excited. Tonight, as part of our 90 Days Around the World promotion, we're heading to California. Beautiful, sunny, not cold like New Hampshire, California. We have Nicole Hitchcock from J Vineyards on the line tonight. She has a really awesome presentation for us. And as well as Nicole, you have me, Carol Ann, your moderator for our 90 Days Around the World attendees who have attended multiple events. I missed you guys while I was on vacation, but I'm back tonight for Wine Wednesday with Chad. So we have Chad from our wine team here as well. And we are very excited for tonight's event. I really wish we could be in California for real, but I will take a virtual visit with Nicole any day of the week. So Nicole, the floor is yours. Let's sip. Let's go. I'm ready.
Yes, let's go. Well, I will say that while California is usually very sunny and bright, right now it's actually dreary, and we got some great rain in the last few hours, which is super welcome. So the 2021 growing season is off to a great start.
That's awesome. More wine for us.
More wine for everybody. Lots to look forward to in 2021 for sure. So just to introduce myself, my name is Nicole Hitchcock. I am winemaker at J Vineyards and Winery. For those of you who aren't terribly familiar with us, we're based in California, obviously, in Sonoma County. We're in the northern part of Sonoma County in the Russian River Valley. And we are a winery that specializes in both sparkling wines as well as Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Pinot Gris. We also make a rosé. So kind of the cooler climate types of varietals that really tend to thrive in the cooler northwestern part of Sonoma County. So background on me, I'm born and raised in California. I grew up on the Central Coast. I went to UC Davis, studied winemaking there for my undergraduate degree. And then I worked in wineries really all over California, as well as Australia. And I've been at J since 2015. So I have the privilege of getting to craft our entire portfolio, which at this point is up to nearly 30 different wines. So the majority of which are sparkling and Pinot Noir, and we're going to taste a few of those tonight. But then, of course, we've got an incredible Chardonnay portfolio and some other gems as well. So quite a great portfolio, and I'm really excited to take you through it. This is the part that I don't get to do as often as I like, is share the wines that my team and I spend, really all of our time crafting. And so it's just really exciting to get to share these with you, and hopefully you enjoy them. So with that, Caroline, do you want to put up the slides?
Yes, absolutely. Let me get that ready for you. So while we get the slide ready, if anybody has any questions at any point tonight, please go ahead and leave them in the comments section on Facebook or in the Q&A section here on Zoom if you're watching on Zoom. So
questions are welcome. Hit me with as many as you like. I love to answer questions. So I don't want to stop anybody from starting to sip because, I'm sure you're ready to do so. So if you'd like to start sipping on your first wine, feel free. We'll talk about exactly what that wine is in just a few minutes. But don't let me talking keep you between yourself and the wine glass. So thought I'd talk a little bit to start off with the history of J Vineyards and Winery, because it's a pretty interesting story. So we were founded in 1986. We've celebrated about 35 vintages now. And we were founded by a woman named Judy Jordan. So you see her picture at the bottom of this screen. And for those of you who are familiar with Jordan Winery up in the Alexander Valley, who specializes in Chardonnay and Cabernet, you'll recognize the name Jordan. So Judy was the daughter of the founders of Jordan, and she grew up in the area. She studied geology at Stanford University, so she knew the region really well. She was also very passionate about her soils and geological and earth sciences. And so she was actually quite young. She was about 25 when she decided that she wanted to go out on her own and create a new venture to produce world-class sparkling wines from the Russian River Valley. And this was a big leap at that time. You know, she was young. Back in the 80s, there wasn't a lot of sparkling that was produced within the region. You know, there were a couple producers and some small projects, but nothing that was really significant. So, you know, she really had a vision, and it's incredible how she brought it to fruition. So she started in 1986. And we produced our first vintage of vintage brut in 1987. And then she ended up moving into the winery where we are now in the town of Healdsburg. So we're just, if you're familiar with the area, we're in the southern part of the town of Healdsburg, which is a great place to visit if you're ever out here. And so moved into the winery where we're at today. Continued to produce sparkling wines throughout the 90s, also started to introduce Pinot Noir into the mix, and started acquiring vineyard properties. You know, when I think to Judy and, you know, really what she was able to establish with Jay, you know, it's about the winery and the wines, but it's also really about the properties, the estate vineyards that, you know, we get to work with. She had an eye for selecting really incredible vineyard sites that are very different from one another. And that's important because with the wines that we make, the Pinot Noir, the sparkling, the Chardonnay, all of those varieties are really transparent to where they're grown. And so to have a variety of different properties allows us to create really unique wines within the greater portfolio. So, you know, a big kudos to her for having an eye for some of those properties. Let's go to the next slide. So these are just a few images of you know, where we are. And on the left-hand side, you see the entrance to our tasting room. I'll talk a lot kind of towards the end of this, this presentation about our hospitality program and our visitor center, but it's really a wonderful place to visit. And then on the right-hand side, just some nice scenic footage. You know, the Russian River Valley, if you haven't been here, is this beautiful kind of pastoral, you know, hilly. There's farmland. There's all these beautiful mountains, redwood trees, oak trees, and all of these great you know, family farms. Lots of family farmers around here. So it's so beautiful to drive through and, you know, just really discover all of the scenery and all of the great wineries and wines that are produced here. Let's go to the next slide. So here's a map just for you to kind of get your bearings. And I think if you look at the map of California, that's yellow kind of in the center, you see where we are in Sonoma County. If you can kind of envision where the J Vineyards and Winery is placed, maybe a little further east than we actually are on this map. We are, you know, we're fairly close to the Pacific. One of the amazing things about the Russian River Valley and where our winery and where our vineyards are situated is the fact that we have this really incredible fog intrusion that comes up through the Petaluma Gap. So a little bit south of us, there's this kind of break in the mountains, and that's where the fog tends to creep in from the Pacific Ocean. And this happens basically every night. We have the fog that comes in and it kind of climbs up the valley towards the town of Healdsburg. And then it burns off mid-morning and starts to creep back down and back out to the Pacific Ocean, leaving behind sunshine, warmth, and, you know, really kind of a perfect climate for growing grapes, and especially grapes that go into sparkling wines, Pinot, Chard, and Pinot Meunier. And then if you take a look at this map as well, one of the wines we're going to taste in a few minutes is a Tri-Appellated Pinot Noir, and so it's a blend of Pinot Noir from 3 counties. So it's Sonoma County, which you can see on that map, Monterey County, and Santa Barbara County. And we'll touch on that more in a moment. Next slide. I'm not going to go terribly in depth in terms of our estate vineyards, but I think the take home is that we have quite an array of really unique properties, mainly in the Russian River. You can see our Foggy Bend vineyard up there on the top left-hand side. It's situated at the bend of the Russian River, where the Russian River starts to turn to go towards the Pacific. And it's a really cool site. It's right by this really iconic bridge called Wooler Bridge that you can kind of see there in the picture. Great site. We've got our Annapolis Vineyard that's on the upper right-hand side, which is really incredible. I have never worked with fruit that is as amazing as the fruit that we get off of our Annapolis Vineyard. It's a super remote site. It takes about an hour and a half or so to drive there by car. And it's not an hour and a half on, a highway or anything. It is an hour and a half on this crazy windy road going through the redwoods. It's super remote. It's about 7 miles inland from the Pacific Ocean. And it's at an elevation as well. So the fruit there ends up being really dark, really high in acidity, lots of tannin, but just very, very different from some of the other vineyard sites that we see throughout the Russian River Valley. So just to touch on a couple there, but really these are situated throughout the region. We have some that are at the far northern part of the region, some that are the far south part of the region, and they all lend something very different to the wines that are produced from those vineyards. Next slide. Again, just kind of more scenery. On the left-hand side, this is our Bowtie Vineyard. So this is our northernmost vineyard in the Russian River Valley AVA. And it's kind of hard to see there. It's shaped kind of like a bow tie. Judy named it Bowtie Vineyard because it does look like a bow tie early, and it kind of reminded her of her of a bow tie that her grandfather used to wear. So it's a fun name and an amazing site where we grow both Pinot and Chard. So we can jump to the next slide. So I don't know if you've been sipping yet on your first glass. I hope you have been, and I didn't really say what it was. So here's what you should be sipping on if you haven't started yet. This is our California Cuvée Brut. This is a non-vintage sparkling blend. I'm going to talk a little bit about our process of sparkling winemaking over the next few slides. But all of the sparkling wines that we produce at J are made via the traditional method, which is the same approach to sparkling winemaking that's used in Champagne and other notable sparkling wine regions. So this wine holds a special place in my heart because it was one of my very first projects when I joined J. The very first vintage we made of this was vintage 15. And when I say vintage 15, that can be kind of confusing because you might say, well, it's a non-vintage. How could it be vintage 15? Well, all of our non-vintage wines are going to be predominantly one vintage in particular. And then we add back reserve wines or wines that we've held separate from previous vintages. We'll add back about 25 to 30%, give or take, depending on the vintage. And that's pretty typical when you're talking about non-vintage sparkling wines. It allows producers to maintain a certain level of consistency across their different bottlings. But it also lends kind of a more evolved character. It makes the wine taste, kind of smoother rather than just fresh, bright, and youthful. It kind of softens it out and allows us to release earlier. So I saw a question pop up that said, what makes it brut? Okay, so according to the rules of Champagne, to have it be brut, the sugar content in the final wine, so the residual sugar content needs to be between 0 grams per liter to 12 grams per liter. In California, we don't necessarily need to abide by those rules. We have the liberty to really craft the wines in whatever style we make. But at J, we do align with those same rules that are used in Champagne. So this wine, you see on here the dosage, it says 12 grams per liter. So we're kind of at the upper end of brut, but still firmly in that brut category. Brut basically means that it is it's mostly dry. There might be some residual sugar, but it's not going to taste sweet. It's going to be more on the dry and kind of vibrant side. So that's kind of what that means. You'll also see on this slide that the wine spends 24 months minimum on tirage. You'll see in a couple slides what that actually means, but essentially it means we're aging the wine in bottle for at least 24 months before it gets disgorged and then goes out to you to be enjoyed. So the blend of this is 57% Chardonnay, 40% Pinot Noir, and 3% Pinot Meunier. Those again are the traditional varieties that are used in champagnes, and those are the only three that we use in our sparkling wines that are made at J. This wine is also California appellated, and it doesn't mean that it came from anywhere in California. The majority of this actually did come from the Russian River Valley and from Sonoma County, but some of it did come from Monterey County as well. So it just gives us the ability to be able to look at a variety of different sources to be able to craft the style that we're after for this particular wine. So this is kind of our intro. Sparkling wine, great by the glass. This is kind of my house sparkling wine as well. I always have several bottles on hand to open up if there's a good opportunity for it. You see some food pairing suggestions here as well. I don't think, my main recommendation when pairing sparkling with food is don't overcomplicate it. I think, a lot of people, it's been drilled into us forever that sparkling wine, is a wine that's mainly fit for special occasions or when there's something to celebrate. But I think recently it's been catching on, and I'm so glad that you don't really need a special occasion to open a bottle of bubbles. A Tuesday night could, or Wednesday night, I guess I should say, could be a great time to do so. I know, I've been spending a lot of time at home recently, as I'm sure many of you have. And, I'm all into popping open a bottle of bubbles and popping some popcorn and doing some, interesting, flavored salts or truffle oil, really kind of the sky's the limit. And there's so much that you can pair with sparkling that, you really don't need to think too hard about it. There's the classic pairings like fried food. You see potato chips on there, French fries, fried chicken. Those are all great. But there's really so much that you can do with it, and don't be afraid to push the limits. Let's go to the next slide. Keep these comments coming, and if there's questions, please, don't be afraid to put them into the chat. So I hope you have your glass of bubbles, because here's where we start getting a little technical about how we produce our sparkling wines. So I mentioned before, Russian River Valley is where we're situated. That's where we source the vast majority of our fruit from. In terms of the winemaking approach, so we hand harvest all of our grapes. That is a given. All of the grapes that go into our sparkling programs, and really anything that J makes, is hand harvested. And we hand harvest into these small half-ton, quarter-ton bins. This is at night when it's nice and cool. And the idea there is that we don't want a lot of maceration or premature crushing of the grapes or the clusters before they come into the winery and hit the press. With sparkling wines, they are extremely transparent to any type of flaw. And if the flaw might be, astringency or bitterness in the base wine, which is what would result if we harvested the fruit, in warmer temperatures or let it sit around for a while before pressing, if there's any bitterness or astringency in those base wines, that is absolutely going to carry through throughout the secondary fermentation, and then be exacerbated in the final wine. So we go to the extreme to make sure that we're being extremely gentle with the fruit as it's being picked and as it's being delivered to the winery. So during harvest time, it's great. I usually come into the winery around 6:30, 7 a.m. or so. It's cold, it's usually foggy, but there's fruit, there's bins of fruit that are sitting there that are ready and waiting to be pressed. And so that's kind of when we start our day at the winery. The fruit then gets delivered to this press that you see in the middle of the slide. And it's called a Cocard press. And we imported that. We've actually got 2 of them at the winery. We imported them from Champagne, and they are specialized presses for sparkling winemaking. They're just more gentle on the grapes as they're being pressed than other types of presses. And we see that as a big advantage with our sparkling winemaking approach. There's only a handful in California, and we've got 2 of them, which is pretty great. We keep all of our vineyard lots separate throughout pressing and throughout fermentation. We also take a press cut as we're pressing these. So we have a free run lot as well as a press lot. So it's cuvee and tie is what we call them. And we ferment those separately, treat them separately, and then they end up being just different blending components for later on as we're putting our blends together. So then what we do is we ferment the wines just as you would any regular kind of still white wine in the winery, and we ferment in tanks. We ferment in large neutral wooden vessels called foudres, as well as some neutral barrels. So it's really a variety of different fermentation vessels. And then it's usually actually right around this time of the year. It's the new year following the vintage that we actually, the winemaking team, I've got a couple people on my team. We bring in our cellar master as well to help us out with the blending. We start looking at blends. And at J, we're making 12 different sparkling wines when you look at the variety of formats that we do. And so it's, it's a big job, but somebody's got to do it, put together those 12 sparkling blends. I don't know if any of you have ever tasted a sparkling base wine, but it is tart. You get that there's the alcohol, there's the tartness, there's a little bit of color to it, and it just works its magic on your mouth. I will say that every visit to my dentist post-harvest, my dentist looks at me and just, shakes his head. So it can be hard work, but we put the blends together. They go together physically in the cellar, and then we prepare them for what we call tirage bottling. So this is when we're actually going to bottle the wines, and they're going to remain in that bottle for the remainder of their lifetime. On the side, we get a yeast culture going where we add cane sugar, we add yeast. That yeast starter gets combined with the blend that we've prepared for bottle, and then we put them all to bottle. So that blend and then the yeast culture get combined, they go into the bottle. There's a secondary fermentation that happens in the bottle. This is all under crown cap, so the same type of closure that you would you'd use for a beer, but it keeps the bottle under pressure. So there's yeast, there's your base wine, and then there's sugar, and the yeast converts all of that into a little bit more alcohol as well as carbon dioxide, and that's what creates the bubbles that we all enjoy in our glasses of bubbly. So from there, I mentioned Tiraj, right? On the last slide, I said the California cuvee rests for at least 24 months on Tiraj. Well, that's the time that post-bottling that we just let the bottle rest. And what happens there is the secondary fermentation happens, all of the active yeast work their magic and make all of their conversions, and then they slowly die and they settle out to the bottom of the bottle. And then they break down slowly over the course of the next 24 months or more. And so that process is called autolysis. It's what creates the creaminess, the roundness in your bottle of sparkling. But then you've got all this yeast sediment that's just sitting at the bottom of the bottle. And, I don't think anyone really wants to drink that, right? When they ultimately get their bottle of sparkling. So we have to undergo a process called riddling in order to, riddling and disgorgement in order to remove that yeast sediment. So what happens there is you've got and actually I think we can go to the next slide, Carol Ann, because there's some nice visuals on the next one.
Awesome. And I've got a few questions for you in a minute too.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so we riddle, which is where we convert the bottle that's been laying down in a cage. It's been laying down horizontally, and it's slowly over a period of about 3 to 4 days, we invert it so that the sediment that's sitting at the bottom of the bottle as it's laid down horizontally will slowly slide into the neck of the bottle. And it ends up being just compact. It's right at the very edge of the cork and in the neck of the bottle, and all the rest of the liquid that's left behind is clear. So then those bottles the necks are submerged into a frozen solution that essentially just freezes some of the liquid as well as all of the sediment in the neck of the bottle. And then the bottle will go through the bottling line, the crown cap gets popped off. There's all of this internal pressure in the bottle, right? So it shoots out that ice plug that contains all of the sediment, and then everything that's left behind is nice and clear. And then from there, we add in what's called Dosage, which is a blend of reserve wine and also some extra sugar just to kind of round it out. That's where that 12 grams per liter that we've added to the California cuvee comes in. Then we give the wine its cork, its wire hood, and then we let it age for another few months before we release it. So there's really a lot that goes into the process. It's very technical winemaking, and I would say it really requires a lot of patience on behalf of everybody involved, because it takes so much time, and it's such an intensive process. So what were the questions? I've seen a couple of them pop up, but I'm not sure I digested them.
Well, I've got one from Facebook. One of our viewers who's watching live on Facebook was very intrigued when you mentioned at the beginning that you worked in Australia prior to coming to Jay, and was wondering if you could tell us what were you up to in Australia?
Yeah, absolutely. I love talking about Australia. It was such a great experience. I worked harvest at a winery in Western Australia. So it was just inland from Margaret River, called Horton Winery, and worked with a variety of different types of grapes from different regions throughout Western Australia. And yeah, it was really great. It was one of my early harvest experiences, and great to get to work. It was kind of a newer winery, so I had the opportunity to work with some newer technologies. At least then, they're not new now. When I was there, and then just experience a really beautiful place. Margaret River was really incredible, and it's great place for winemakers. A lot of the winemakers there, they surf first thing in the morning, then they go to the winery, and then they surf again, right before going home. So pretty magical lifestyle.
That's awesome. Caitlin here on Zoom is wondering if any of the bottles are hand riddled, or are they all done by the gyro palette? Did I say that right?
It is. Yeah, so we use the gyro palettes for essentially everything these days. You can do either. The smaller the winery you are, probably the more it makes sense to manually riddle, and that would just be on kind of the old school standard riddling racks. But there really is no difference in terms of the outcome or the quality, whether or not you riddle manually or you riddle on a gyro palette. And for those of you who don't know, a gyro palette is, it's basically this big contraption that holds a cage, and the cage contains a bunch of bottles. In our case, it's usually around 500 bottles. It can be 500 to 600 bottles, depending on which one we're talking about. And so then that contraption is what inverts the bottles so that they start horizontally and then they end up neck down. So the end result is the same. As long as you get clear liquid in the end, there really is no difference. The gyro palette just allows you to do it in a more automated fashion.
Cool. And then the last thing, it's not a question, but I just want to give kudos to Laura, who's watching here on Zoom. She left a comment to let us know that her and her sister have started celebrating Mondays with Mimosa Mondays. Laura, you are a smart woman. And
Love it.
I approve of Mimosa Mondays for what it's worth.
As do I. And I just saw a question about during the disgorgement, how all of the wine doesn't come out of the bottle. And I think the picture here, the flow chart might be slightly misleading. You see the riddling, right? That's where it's neck down. During disgorgement, the neck gets submerged in the frozen liquid and it freezes the neck. But then the bottle gets inverted back up so that there's still the ice plug in the neck, but the rest of the liquid is clear beneath. So it's upright when the crown cap gets popped off. And so just the ice plug shoots out. We generally don't lose any wine beyond that.
I would love to be a fly on the wall while that is happening.
Come out to the winery anytime because we're disgorging constantly.
All right, twist my arm. All right.
So I think we can go to the next slide. And if everybody's ready to taste this second wine, it is our Cuvée 20. And so like the California Cuvée, this is also a non-vintage brut style blend. So we're blending back in some previous vintage wine. And then the dosage on this, you can see the dosage is a little bit lower than the California Cuvée. The California Cuvée was 12 grams per liter. This is 10.5 grams per liter. And I should say, in terms of dosage, like how do we determine dosage? Is it just a recipe? Or are we just, deciding what it's going to be? No, it involves a lot of tasting and a lot of trial work. So what happens is, as we know that we're coming up on the disgorgement of a particular sparkling wine, our lab tech will get a bunch of bottles of the wine that we're going to be disgorging, and then we'll run a series of trials where different levels of dosage is added to each bottle. And sometimes it's different makeup of dosage. So we'll have we might have a barrel-aged Chardonnay that makes up the base of the dosage. We may just be using the same exact blend that is currently in the bottle. So there's really a lot that we can do with the makeup of the dosage. And then there's also the amount of dosage that we add. So we might set up a trial for Cuvée 20, for example. We might try a bottle that's at 9 grams per liter, 10 grams per liter, 10.5, 11, etc. And so me, my winemaking team, and our cellar management will all sit down. We actually bring our chef in as well, I should say, as well as our tasting room manager. So it ends up being, a pretty fun little gathering. And we taste through all of the trials, and we taste them blind. We don't know what we're tasting. We know that it's Cuvée 20, for example, but we don't know what each of the glasses represents in terms of dosage. So we each taste, we rank them, we talk about them, and then we decide which one we're going to do, which wine has the best balance and the best expression of what we're trying to do with that particular offering. So so we like to do it as a group. It's convivial. It's great to get I think the feedback from our chef, because he's ultimately going to be pairing dishes with the wines. Feedback from our tasting room manager, because she's the one who interacts more than any of us with all of the guests that come in and here's their feedback. So we've got a pretty multifaceted group, and there's really a lot that goes into determining what that dosage is going to be. So a little background there. More about our Cuvée 20. This is Russian River Valley appellated. So we tasted the California Cuvée that was from various regions in California. This is all solely focused on the Russian River Valley. And you can see the makeup is those same 3 varietals, although it's different percentages. And yeah, I talked a little bit about the Russian River Valley and why it's so great for growing Pinot and Chard. I talked about the cool climate. The other thing I think to note about Russian River that makes it really unique is the variety of different soils and terrains throughout the region. So I mentioned Judy is studied geology, big into soils. I think that was part of her criteria as she selected some of these different sites. But it's been said that there's more different types of soil in Sonoma County than there are in all of France. You know, this region has been impacted over the millennia by volcanoes, earthquakes. A large portion of the Russian River Valley actually used to be underwater as well. And, you know, I can see that when I go out and visit vineyards. We have this one property where you walk through the vineyard and you're literally kicking these fossilized ancient shells. And, you know, we're talking 20 miles inland from the Pacific at an elevation. So the geological history is really impressive. And I think that combined with the climate and the topography gives us a lot of really unique properties to work with and allows us to make extremely distinctive wines, whether they be sparkling or still wines. And I think, you know, if I were to compare this wine to the California Cuvée, I think they're quite different. And if any of you have both glasses poured at the same time, right now would be a great time to compare them. The California Cuvée is crafted, and I think certainly it comes across as being more bright citrus, kind of fresh, lifted. You know, there's some pear. There's, you know, a lot of that citrus character. It's really, really bright and approachable. As you move into the Cuvée 20, we didn't talk about Tiraj for this. The Cuvée 20 gets aged on Tiraj for a minimum of 30 months, but it might be quite longer, just depending. So that extra Tiraj time, as well as some of the different fermentation vessels we use for the Cuvée 20, give it more of a creamy, kind of toasted. The descriptors in this sheet I think are really nice. Creme brulee, there's some brioche as well. And it's just more spicy and kind of full rather than the bright citrus notes that you get in the California Cuvée. So 2 very different styles of sparkling, both primarily from Sonoma County. But I think that just shows you, you know, what we can do as winemakers to differentiate the styles of these wines and make something for everybody, really. So let's go to the next slide. Hopefully everybody's enjoying the Cuvée 20. It's kind of our flagship. It's our flagship sparkling. We first made it for our 20th anniversary, which was quite a few years ago now. But it was so popular that it's just kind of stuck with us. So it's one of our more popular wines.
So Nicole, I've got a question for you before we go into this one. So Donna is watching on Facebook and she wants to know what triggers Jay to make more Brut or Cuvée styles than non-bubbles each year.
And non-bubbles. So we have, you know, we like to maintain consistency, you know, vintage, you know, year over year, right? A lot of the wines that we make are for our wine club. And we have a pretty good pulse on what our wine club members, you know, like and would like to purchase. But then we've got the rest of our core portfolio that's distributed and that you probably see in your stores. And so we're making wines really to fulfill those needs. It's not kind of a vintage by vintage decision of, are we going to make more sparkling this year or more still? You know, there's really more planning that goes into that. But like I said, we make 12 different sparkling wines. Most of those are very small. You know, they're less than 1,000 cases, and they're distributed only through our winery and our wine club. But then, you know, the couple that we tasted today, we've also got a non-vintage Brut Rosé, et cetera. Those have been very popular and successful for us, you know, out distributed nationwide. And so, so we continue to make those vintage over vintage. Does that answer the question?
I think so. She does have a follow-up though. She wants to
Sure.
know if you were to suggest Pinot flights to see their contrast, which 3 Pinots would you pick?
Ooh, off of the J, I'm assuming this is off of the J offerings, the
Oh yeah.
website. Yeah, so I would definitely pick, I would pick the multi-appellated Pinot, which we're gonna taste after this Chardonnay. I think that's a great one to start with. I would also select the Russian River Valley Pinot Noir. And then I'd really select any of the vineyard designate Pinots. You know, you might try our bow tie Pinot. That would be a great one. So would our Canfield Pinot Noir. They're all really distinctive, and selecting those 3 would be an interesting flight because you'd be getting more and more specific as you go, you know, into each glass, and specific in terms of where that fruit is sourced from. And I think you'd see pretty phenomenal differences between each glass.
Awesome. And then just one more before we get into this wine. So one of our 90 Days regulars here on Zoom, she is curious, the 2 sparkling wines that you shared both have typically dark, what we think of as dark grapes in them. How come the sparkling wine doesn't end up dark?
Yes, great question. The main reason, there's a few reasons, but I would say that the primary reason is because of our handling of the grapes up front, and as we're harvesting them. So I talked about hand harvesting at night when it's cool. So you've got all these, you know, nice intact clusters that come in and are not crushed prematurely before they get pressed. That, you know, that's like 95% of the battle. If we get that right, then the rest is pretty easy. You do pick up some color during pressing, especially for the press fraction that gets pressed a little bit harder, which is what we call the tie fraction. So, you know, you do pick up some color from that. Sometimes there's some bright pink, but where you really get color is when you have warm fruit or fruit that's already been crushed and has been, you know, the skins have been macerating with the juice. So if we get all of the upfront right, you know, we should be all good. Granted, a lot of times we do go to bottle with a tinge, and especially, you know, even in the case of the California Cuvée or Cuvée 20, we go to bottle with a tinge of kind of a, you know, peachy type of color. And, you know, that does come from the Meunier, it comes from the Pinot Noir. And what happens over the course of that secondary fermentation is a lot of that color tends to fall out of solution. So when you look at the sediment, if you were actually to pull some of the sediment, the yeast sediment out of the bottle after that secondary fermentation, you probably would see some color in that, but the remaining liquid would be a lot, you know, more clear and more, you know, yellow in terms of its color. So a lot of that color drops out of solution during secondary fermentation.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now I think it might be Chardonnay time.
It's always Chardonnay time. Okay, so this is our California Chardonnay, and you know, the description California may be a little bit misleading. This is actually a tri-county appellated Chardonnay. The idea with this Chardonnay was to look at which appellations in California produce the best Chardonnays in the state. And, you know, for me, that would be Monterey County, Sonoma County, and Napa County. I'm actually a Monterey County native, so that holds a special place in my heart. But there's some beautiful Chardonnays that are planted throughout that region, and you tend to get you know, some really great richness from Monterey County. A lot of stone fruit, lots of tropical fruit. And then Sonoma County, of course, which is where we are located. So we have access to a lot of great Chardonnay within this region. I think Sonoma County provides gorgeous acidity, also some minerality and just texture. And then Napa County, obviously Napa Chardonnays are very well known across the country, across the world. But that appellation really lends weight and fullness to the blend. So The idea here is combine Chardonnay from these different counties that deliver really different qualities of Chardonnay into a blend that's seamless and really harmonized with a lot of those characteristics. This is a wine that I find to be particularly spicy. There's a lot of sweet aromatics in here. So when I say sweet aromatics, I'm thinking there's some nutmeg, there's some clove, coconut macaroons are called out here as well. So there is some coconutty types of characteristics. And it's really full, round. I love this pairing that's on this sheet right here with the chilled corn soup and grilled shrimp. That's like my favorite dish to pair with a lot of different Chardonnays, and in particular this one because it is so round, full, and it's got that citrus, it's got the stone fruit, the crispness, and I think it's a beautiful pairing. So so hopefully you're enjoying this one. This is probably one of the trickiest. This and then the Pinot Noir, I would say, are the trickiest wines that my team and I make. Just given the complexity surrounding sourcing all of this great fruit, but from very different regions of the state, and then having them come together in a way that works well. So we've learned a lot over the years about which combinations seem to work the best. What the best, oak and barrel regime tends to be. This wine undergoes 100% malolactic just to give it that creaminess and fullness. And so we've learned a lot and definitely can put that into practice vintage over vintage now. So let's go to unless there's any questions on the Chardonnay, we can jump into the Pinot Noir next. Okay, I see. What sort of vessel is this wine fermented in initially, oak or stainless? Both. So the answer is there is some stainless steel fermentation, and then there's a lot of barrel fermentation as well. So it's really a combination. When I think of barrel fermentation, it's a much more oxidative type of process than if you're fermenting in a stainless steel tank. So you tend to get, some of those more toasty notes, and some of that comes from the barrel, but some of it comes from the micro-oxygenation that happens as small amounts of oxygen creep through the oak and then come in contact with the wine, and it gives it a different texture and a different flavor profile than when you're in stainless steel fermenting a Chardonnay, and you get more of the, more crisp, fruit-forward types of characteristics. Okay, so the next wine, and actually our final wine, is our multi-appellated Pinot Noir. And so like the Chardonnay, this is tri-county appellated, but instead of going to Napa County, we went to Santa Barbara County. And so 40% Monterey, 37% Sonoma, 23% Santa Barbara. And so like the Chardonnay, each of these appellations offers something different. Monterey County Pinot, I tend to get a lot of dark fruit and a lot of like nice tannin and structure. Sonoma County is beautiful fruit intensity, and again, kind of more structure, but also more acidity. And then Santa Barbara County, this is mostly Santa Maria Valley AVA, which is kind of in the center of the county, but it's really breezy. It's very, very sandy soils, and you tend to get more kind of savory notes, nice acidity as well, but a lot of red fruits. So that, in combination with some of the darker fruit from Monterey County, all of the structural elements from Sonoma County, create a really interesting combination for this particular wine. So this is fermented in stainless steel, mainly open top fermentation tanks. And then post fermentation, we'll drain and press, and then the wine gets aged in barrel for, usually it's about 6, 7, 8 months or so in barrel before we come out, put our blend together, and then go to bottle. It's a combination of French oak. It's primarily French oak, but there's also some American oak used with this. And I think the French oak is really a nod to the Pinot Noirs that we make in the rest of the J portfolio, where we use primarily only French oak, I should say. So, you get some of the more subtle characteristics, much more structural elements that come from that French oak, but then layering in a little bit of American oak into this gives it some of those more vanilla and spicy characteristics, rather than just the subtle kind of dark notes that you get from the French oak. So I think this is a wine. This is a Pinot that I think is perfect for enjoying on its own. So, just sipping a glass, maybe as you're cooking dinner, but it also pairs really well with a variety of different dishes. Grilled salmon is one of my favorites for sure. I also love this with lamb and especially lamb kebabs, that kind of thing. But it's very versatile in terms of how you can drink it and how you can enjoy it.
Nicole, can I just say, I love that you have the harvest dates on all of these slides, because I can imagine what I was doing while these grapes were being picked. So now I can go get this bottle and I can think back to Halloween 2018 when I was dressed up as Captain Marvel giving out candy to my neighborhood kids.
Yes. Well, and I will say 2018 was the harvest that just kept going on and on and on forever. And we were still going strong at the winery on Halloween that year. I remember vividly, for harvest at J, we're a sparkling house, but we also make all of this Pinot and Chard, which means that our summer ends usually right around August 1st. So that's when we might start up with harvest, which is a lot earlier than wineries that just focus on still wines. And then it's not uncommon for us to go all through the month of October. So it can be a long multi-week harvest that, we're all ready to celebrate when all is said and done. That's for sure. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So I don't know how many of you that are on this have visited J, but there's lots of reasons to come and join us. We've been open on and off over the past few months due to the pandemic and just other events. But in normal times, and then hopefully later this year, as things start to resemble normal again, we'll be able to open again for a lot of these experiences. But we have the most incredible culinary team on site, and they're led by our executive chef, Carl Shelton, who you see there on the right-hand side. And Carl comes from a great background. I've had the privilege of being able to work with him for, I think it's been about 4 years now. And he is the most creative, innovative chef that I've ever worked with. I remember when he first joined the winery, the first thing he wanted to do was go out and see all of the different vineyard sites, because he wanted to forage and find ingredients at each of the vineyard sites to incorporate into the menus that he was creating. And he has regularly blown my mind in terms of innovative pairings that I would have never come up with or expected, and especially with respect to sparkling pairings. I think people can be intimidated with wine and food pairing in general, but especially sparkling pairing. But he really pushes the boundaries. He does an all sparkling menu every end of the year. So it's usually December and then going into January, where he pairs all sparkling wines with a multi-course menu. And it's usually kind of this discovery in terms of what actually can work in terms of pairings with sparkling. But some of the experiences that we have here on site are our bubble room. So that is the multi-course experience that I mentioned, where it's sit down, it's like a 2-3 hour affair. It's such a treat. The menu changes every 6 weeks, and each course is paired with a tasting room exclusive wine from the J portfolio. There's a big focus on local sourcing, and then also on seasonal fare as well. And what I love the most is that I get the chance to sit down with Carl and his team each at the beginning of each one of these menu releases and pair the wines with each of the courses. So can't complain about that. But the Bubble Room is a really special experience. It was really the first of its kind in Sonoma County when Judy originally instituted the Bubble Room at J. It was big news because there weren't a lot of other wineries that were doing food and wine pairings at that level at the time. We also have the Legacy Lounge, which is where guests can come in and you can do a sit-down tasting. So it'll be 4 or 5 glasses of winery exclusive J wines paired with potentially a cheese plate if you opt to do that. The cheese plates, the name cheese plate does not do it justice. It's the best cheese plate you've ever had in your life. It's paired with accoutrements with each of the cheeses that allows them to pair more fluidly with each of the wines. And then we have just kind of the standard signature bar experience. So if you just want to swing by the winery for maybe a more informal type of tasting and taste through a lineup with one of our tasting room staff members, there's that for you as well. So lots of different options depending on what you're looking out for with respect to your visit. Okay, let's go to the next slide.
We had a few people on Facebook asking if they could come visit and what kind of visiting options you had. And I was like, ooh, I know that slide's coming up.
So now that I've absolutely sold it, I will say right now, our visitor center is closed for the time being due to the pandemic. We're hoping that we'll be able to reopen as soon as possible. We've been open, not inside over the last few months. We've been doing outside seating only. And of course, all socially distanced and spaced out according to, pretty strict protocol. You see our outside area on this slide. And so it makes for a really nice afternoon to sit outside, enjoy the wines, enjoy some food. And then on the right-hand side is a great example of what we've been doing in lieu of our really extensive Bubble Room menu. It's more of a smaller version of that Bubble Room menu, but just as special. So you see there's 5 different plates there, and then paired with a selection of different wines. And that menu is changing regularly as well. So there's still lots to offer. I would say if you would like to come visit, just keep visiting our website. We also are on Instagram as well if you want to find us and follow us there. But there's news about our opening status that should be as real time as we could make it, and that's the best way to keep in tune.
Awesome.
Yeah. I just saw a question pop up about which wine that we tasted today was my favorite and why. That's the hardest question that anybody's asked me yet today. My heart would probably go to our Cuvée 20, just because it's really been our standard and it's been our flagship sparkling for so long now. I think it's a great representation specifically of what the Russian River Valley can do in terms of sparkling wines. And so we take a lot of pride in that wine and in all the wines, of course. But Cuvée 20, I think, will always hold a special place in my heart.
Great. Nicole, we have another question for you. Mark here on Zoom is wondering, what is the defining characteristic of a good sparkling wine versus a great one? He goes on to just mention that he knows how to evaluate the structure, the profile of a still wine, but evaluating sparkling is more unclear to him. How does he know?
Yeah, I think, like with all wines, sparkling wines they can be very subjective, and depending on what style you like, you may really lean in a different direction than somebody else. But similar to with still wines, first and foremost, the sparkling wine should have no flaws. And so, by that definition, I would say it's probably a good sparkling wine. Now, what makes it special? I would say mouthfeel. So mouthfeel and texture is a big one. So foam and mousse. And what you're looking for there is, again, it's subjective. So it's what you like, but it should be smooth, round. There shouldn't be any, pain or roughness or astringency. It should just be, very smooth and pleasant in the mouth. It's really nice to have the bubbles continue to persist throughout the glass. There's nothing that I hate more than pouring myself a glass of sparkling wine and it just, fizzes out quickly. There's, no more carbonation. I like that persistence of bubbles. But then I think lastly, what makes a sparkling wine go from good to great is layers and nuance. And that's the same thing with still wine. That's the same thing I would say for still wines is, for a good sparkling wine, it might be easy to drink, approachable, simple, enjoyable. That's nice. But to get it to the next level, there need to be layers. And when I say layers, what I mean that each sip, each sniff that you take, maybe you're discovering something new. You're coming up with some new term to describe something that you're recognizing in that glass. So it should continue to deliver something that's intriguing and interesting to you as you continue to sip. So it kind of pulls you in and you want another glass.
I think that you're kind of making all of us want some sparkling wine right now, especially myself.
Well, great. So
what do you think? Will it go good with my chili for dinner?
Perfect. I mean, I think that this Pinot Noir would go with that chili stunningly.
All right, I'll do it. I'll drink it.
So I think, yeah, that's our last slide. Just more imagery of Jay. But like I mentioned, we take lots of pride in all of the wines that we produce. I think, for our sparkling wines, there's a lot of commitment that goes into each one of those, from the harvesting through the tirage, through the aging, and out as it gets to you as well. So hopefully you've enjoyed them, and hopefully I've been able to provide some insight on sparkling winemaking as well.
You did a great job. There are so many people asking you questions. Like so many, I can't even decide which ones. Okay, well, while we go through the questions to ask Nicole, can you ask us some questions? I know we have some trivia questions tonight for some cool prizes, some J glasses, 2 sets of those, and a J branded Patagonia vest.
All right. Okay, so you want me to ask the questions?
If you could ask the first one and then I'll watch the chat for the answers, the correct answer, that would be great.
Sure, that sounds great. Okay, so first question would be, what are the 3 grape varieties that make up Jay's sparkling wines?
All right, so for those of you answering this question, you are entering to win a set of glasses. The answers are coming in. You guys are quick. All right, everyone. They're still coming. You guys are smart. You were really paying close attention.
I know, I'm impressed.
All right. So the winner of the first set of glasses is Tim here on Zoom.
All right.
Tim, the correct answers to that question were Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier. All right, before we go into the next one, let's ask Nicole another question. Which one should we do? Oh, well, speaking of the Pinot Meunier, which was one of the answers to our trivia question, one of our viewers here on Zoom is wondering, what does that 3% add to the wine?
That is a great question, because a lot of people haven't maybe necessarily tasted Pinot Meunier on its own. It is very similar in terms of its characteristics to Pinot Noir. You get a lot of the same red fruit qualities, potentially some cherry notes, some strawberry, maybe some raspberry, but it leans a little bit more in the earthy camp. So you get just maybe more notes of, of soil and just kind of earthy types of components. And it also ages a little bit more readily. So whereas Pinot Noir will retain its freshness and its bright red fruit longer, Pinot Meunier will age a little bit more quickly. So those fresh fruit notes will become subdued, and it'll take on more of this kind of aged character, which is actually really interesting. So that's kind of what it delivers. When we're figuring out what our blends are going to be, we're tasting everything blind. So there's not an intentional, hey, we're going to add 3% Pinot Meunier and see what it does. Instead, we're tasting all of the elements that could potentially go into the blend and then assembling them in the way that we think is the most appropriate for the wine style that we're looking after.
Great. The next question is a two-parter, and it's actually for me. So somebody wanted to know what tonight's code word is. So the code word for tonight's event, for those of you playing along with our Passport app, is New World Flair. And the second part of that question was, if I miss an event, how can I get the code word going forward? So if you're on Facebook, the live stream from tonight is always available immediately after an event. If you don't use Facebook and you want to tune in still, we upload the recordings to our YouTube page as well. That doesn't happen instantly. Facebook, it happens instantly. It's done for us by Facebook. Thanks, Facebook. So on YouTube, you just have to wait a couple of days for the replay, but you can always watch the replay to get the code words. And I mean, you can still get code words from our first event from back in November if you'd like, and earn points for that. So great question. All right. So this next trivia question, Nicole, if it's okay, I'd like to ask this one.
Yes.
And then you can reveal the answer.
That sounds good. And I'm not sure I'm not sure that I actually said what the answer to was with this entire question. So there might be a little bonus with part of it. So go for it.
All right. So the question is, everybody ready? Virtual hands up if you're ready. Okay. All right. What is the minimum and maximum amount of time that J Sparkling Wines spend in Tiraj? So we're looking for 2 years here. And this question is for a set of glasses. So we're looking for the minimum and maximum amount of time. Right. Mike, good job guessing anyway. Mike just left a cute little comment here on Zoom. So, all right, Nicole, the answers have dwindled. So I think you can reveal the answer.
Yes. Okay. So like I mentioned, I don't think I actually mentioned the longest amount of time of the sparkling wines aging in Tiraj within our portfolio. But what I did talk about was 24 months for the California Cuvée and 30 months for the Cuvée 20. So I think anybody who answered 24 and 30, that's probably correct. What I had meant to talk about earlier was that we actually go up to 7 years on Tiraj in the case of our late disgorged sparkling wines. So we actually age some of our wines for 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. And so, much longer than that. But what we tasted today was 24 and 30 months respectively.
Okay, awesome. So I just took everybody's names who answered with 24 and 30 and picked a random. I have a randomizer up on my screen, and Jack Harris, you are the winner of the second set of glasses.
Awesome.
This is so fun.
Yeah.
Nicole,
congratulations, Jack.
I wish we'd go live with you every night. This is awesome. Another question came in while people were answering. Somebody asked, is it true that you're offering 15% off in your stores right now? Yes, we are having, it's our Cheers to You sale right now for the month of January. Chad, would you mind sharing a little bit more information about that?
Yep. So our January promotion is 15% off 12 or more bottles of wine. It's any wine in our stores of the 750 milliliter and 375 milliliter bottles. It's our customer appreciation sale right now. So all of these products do qualify for that case discount too.
Awesome. Thanks, Chad. Yeah, I knew I wasn't quite saying the specifics of the sale right when I just read that. So thank you, Chad, for having all the info. All right, everyone, last trivia question. We really appreciate you all tuning in tonight. It's been a really fun night. This last question is for a J branded Patagonia vest, which would be perfect for New England at this time of year. It would be perfect for me, but I am not eligible to win, so I will live vicariously through one of you. Please share a picture when you get it. So the question is, what is the name of the press used at J for pressing sparkling grapes? And remember, this is the press that they have two of. There are only a handful of them in California. Oh, look at all.
I'm so impressed.
You guys are smart. All right, I'm going to pull another winner at random from the people who answered correctly. Tim, don't worry, spelling does not matter. I know what you mean in this case. It's a French word. All right, just another second. Sorry, guys. While I do that, I'm going to just tell you the code word again. Tonight's code word is New World Flair. Enter that into your app for 100 points. All right, I've got my random winner. It is our attendee who goes by their initials, NM. So NM, I will be, if you could all email me, that would be great. I put my email address in the chat, but I will be reaching out in the morning as well. So awesome. Congratulations, everybody. You guys did great. So many correct answers. Awesome job. I'm just seeing if there are any last questions for Nicole. Oh, somebody just mentioned in the chat that they did not get, oh, I'm sorry. They didn't get the answer. Sorry, guys. I'm seeing all these answers in Zoom, and I'm just assuming that you're all seeing. I'm sorry. So the correct answer to that last trivia question is probably being butchered by me at this moment, but it is Cocard.
Cocard. Yep. Close enough.
I tried. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. We had such a great time. Nicole, do you have any last tidbits that you want to tell us about Jay before we let you go tonight?
Hey, I would just say, thanks. Like I said, it's been a pleasure sharing the wines with you. Please come visit us when you're in California. I hope we'll be open by then, but you can keep track of us on our website, jwine.com, or follow us on social media. So thanks for tasting through these with me tonight, and take care.
Awesome. Thanks, Nicole. Thanks, Chad. Thank you, Brianna and Erin and Lauren behind the scenes, and Joe for helping us review all these questions tonight. You guys are awesome. You all love wine and have such great questions about it. I feel like we should all become winemakers now. So thanks for
We're
a great
always
night.
looking for interns here in California, just to throw it out there.
Awesome. I mean, can I be an intern? All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. We will see you again tomorrow night. It's wine month now. We couldn't have you joining us live for wine week this year. So we're doing wine month for January. We've got a wine tasting happening every night this week. And then every night next week. It's going to be great. So check out our website, 90daysaroundtheworld.com. See if some of your favorite brands are going to be participating, or find some new favorites. It's going to be awesome. We'll be all around the world. So we will talk to you again tomorrow night. See you all soon.
Bye.
Bye.